Hi guys, this is going to be a video on how to set up your Schlenk line. So first things first, of course, we have to make sure that our pump is switched on, and you'll be able to hear it making a lot of noise. We're then going to attach our solvent trap to our line. So with any glass joint that is featured on the Schlenk line, we have to apply some grease to it to seal it in place, make sure no air can get in, and we're going to apply 2 decent lines of silicone grease to the inner joint of the solvent trap. We can then attach the trap, and we're going to twist and rotate it around. I'm going to spread that grease evenly, and it should appear translucent, and that's when we know that it's been evenly spread. We can clip this in place with a ket clip, and we should have a clamp nearby, but we need to make sure that we're not actually tightening this clamp. We don't want to be putting any strain on the glassware, as when it's put under vacuum it can just break it. So we just have this very loosely around just to make sure that it's not knocked. At this point we'll hear a hissing sound as air is being pulled in through the air bleed here. So in order to put the whole system under a vacuum, as the pump is lowering the pressure, we need to close our air bleed off. And not just until we see the white line, but we need to make sure this is quite tight. And then at that point we'll see the pressure start to get down as the line has been exposed to vacuum. The blue arrow does denote the lowest pressure the line tends to pull to, but you won't really see it get to that pressure until we add our liquid nitrogen into our dewar for our solvent trap. So when we're attaching or fitting our dewar against our solvent trap, we need to make sure that we essentially cover as much as we can, but at the same time leaving a small gap between the solvent trap and the bottom of the dewar. So we raise up our lab jack until it's about 1 centimetre off the bottom of the dewar that we're holding against the trap, and then we just let it sit down, and that's to ensure liquid nitrogen can get underneath the trap to cool it effectively. With our thermo gloves then, we can head over to the big liquid nitrogen dewar, and we stand to the side and pour into a handled dewar. We stand to the side just in case it slips or anything spills. We're not going to spill that onto our feet, which of course would be rather bad. You'll need a full one of these in order to fill the dewar on your line, so make sure you top that up, and also that you put the lid back on to prevent any evaporation. We're going to pour this in fairly slowly and incrementally, so you'll find that as you start to fill it up, the liquid nitrogen, obviously being put into a relatively warm container, is going to start bubbling and fizzing and spitting out the liquid nitrogen. At that point you just need to wait a few seconds, let it subside before adding in the next load of liquid nitrogen. And we need to make sure this is filled all the way to the top. It can be a bit deceiving, where like the dewar reflects where the liquid nitrogen is and you think that it's got to the top, but it's actually halfway down. And it's quite important that this is totally filled, as you need to get adequate cooling for us to condense any solvent that we take off the line before it gets into the pump, which can damage it. So once it's at the top, we can then cover it with our tea towel to prevent any evaporation. And then our line then should be put under a good vacuum, and we'll see our needle near 10 to the minus 1 M-bar or around the blue arrow. So at this point we should really check for any gaps in any of the grease, any of the joints, which of course would increase the pressure through air leaks. We may need to refill the liquid nitrogen dewar throughout the day, usually once in the morning, once in the afternoon, just topping that up, never letting it really get around halfway full. You need to make sure that you're on top of that. If the pressure does start slowly kind of creeping up, you need to then check all of these glass joints which have grease on, because gaps can appear in the grease and allow air to seep in. So we need to just give them a little wiggle to reset the grease. And usually it'll be 1 or 2 taps, which tend to be temperamental, and we'll see the pressure start to go down again. And this needs to be monitored throughout the day, of course, because it's quite important for us to keep low pressures to be working in an air sensitive environment.